Sup peeps, Rockskull here. I think most people know about that recent Dead by Daylight PTB where everyone in the community literally just exploded. It featured an anti-tunnel and anti-slug system that would massively change the balance of the game. So of course it caused a massive community uproar, and that eventually just got the whole thing removed. Seeing it all made me wonder, is an anti-tunnel and anti-slug feature in Dead by Daylight necessary? And if it is, how should it actually be implemented? We'll get into that soon, but first I should probably go over a summary of all the changes that were on the PTB for those who don't know. Starting with the anti-tunneling changes, we have buffs to unhook protections. As soon as a survivor got unhooked, they had 30 seconds of 10% haste, endurance, a new status effect called elusive that makes you hidden, loss of collision, revealed the killer's aura within 32 meters, immunity to killer instinct, and immunity to AFK crows. These effects are lost when performing a conspicuous action like a generator, and are lost when all generators are completed, besides the haste and endurance status effects. An update to the hook status too on the killer side, where they can no longer see it on the HUD, or the aura of the hook. There's also a 10-second delay to the loud noise notification after a survivor is unhooked. These effects are lost when all generators are completed. Unique hook bonuses were also added when you hook a survivor that is different from the last hook survivor. You get a 20% regression bonus to your next generator kick, 10% haste for 15 seconds, and you reveal all survivors outside of 40 meters that have less hook states. Also, certain high mobility killers got less of these bonuses, those being the Blight, Dark Lord, Ghoul, Hillbilly, Krasu, and Nurse. And this was also disabled when generators were completed. Oh, and you thought we were done. Nope. There's also tunneling penalties. If you kill a survivor when you have less than 6 total hooks, the remaining survivors will get a 25% gen speed bonus, and killers lose the ability to regress or block generators by any means. Now finally, we move to the anti-slug system. With this, survivors gain the ability to fully recover if they are left on the ground for 90 seconds total in a match. Additionally, you can crawl and recover at the same time, recovering is automatic, and you slowly gain more movement speed the longer you are left on the ground. Whew! Okay, well I think that was everything. I don't see a point in going over the corresponding perk changes too here, but I hope this gives you the general gist of the patch. Getting into my thoughts, I think you know where I'm about to go with this. It's just too much, man. There were so many minor number changes that I feel were super unnecessary, and overcomplicates a game where I always felt like a lot of its charm has been in its simplicity. I definitely understand tackling tunneling and slugging in the game's current state is a complicated issue, but I think there are more simple ways we can do it, similar to the positively received endgame collapse the devs did a while back. Before I talk about the negatives here, I do want to say I'm glad the devs are going this route at all for combating these issues. In the past, they've always tried to solve tunneling and slugging using perks, and with how the perk system works in Dead by Daylight, it unfortunately pretty much means combating tunneling and slugging means you have to pay up. I'm of course of the opinion that base game issues should be solved with base game features, but I also think these features should be simple and easily communicated to the player. This is to make the newbie experience not so overwhelming like the PTB was. On top of that negative, I also don't think this was the best PTB to test these features on, as it included a whole new killer and survivor, and a pretty massive killer rework to Myers. In my opinion, these bloated PTBs make it so giving individual opinions on these changes is impossible, and I also imagine it really overworks the devs if drastic changes are needed before it comes to live, which could explain the Crash's overtuned release. I hope this at least changes for their sake down the line. Now for which changes I liked here, for the anti-tunnel system, I think I do like the idea of the hook reward system, and the major tunneling penalties. They are both just executed poorly in my opinion. We'll get into what I think they should have done in the next section. For the anti-slug system, the auto recovery is nice, which I'm glad they kept alive, but otherwise I'm not too sure about these other changes. Slugging to this degree is so rare, and in reality, the changes only really punish the killers that rely on slugging like Twins and Oni. I think we should instead be focusing on punishing those extreme moments where a killer is leaving multiple survivors on the ground for a long period of time. One idea for anti-slug I would be open to is one I heard from Tofu and Scott Jung's Fog Gapping podcast, where he said if two survivors are fully recovered next to each other on the ground, they can pick each other up. This would help those extreme moments of slugging where there are people on the ground for a prolonged period of time, but still keep strategic slugging viable on the killer side. Now for my anti-tunneling idea, I'm going to be basing off those two changes that have hook rewards and the hard tunneling punishment. I want to preface this by saying my goal isn't to get rid of tunneling entirely, as I believe that unfortunately it's an issue that will always be there due to how DBD is designed. Similar to toxicity in general in online games. It would require so many fundamental changes to the game, it wouldn't really be DBD anymore. I think this is why the PTB failed, as it seemed more like they were trying to get rid of tunneling entirely. My goal here is to rather just reduce the amount of tunneling that occurs. We'll start with my suggested changes to the hook rewards. The hook rewards in the PTB were odd, as it really only buffed certain killers, while not changing much to most others. There were also just way too many effects that made it too confusing to play with. So what is one thing we could give to all killers that rewards them for consistently making unique hooks? Blood points. If you played DBD a few years back, you may remember the perk barbecue and chili actually did something like this. And honestly, when it was around, a ton of killer players just weren't tunneling so they could get the max stacks of this perk. I think a similar thing could be added to the base game, or maybe there's a multiplier blood point visual next to the hook counter that goes up each time you make a unique hook. That multiplier would then be added to your blood point total at the end of the match. This I think would be the perfect solution for the casual player base of DBD. But what about the more competitive and sweaty side? I know there are some players out there that only care about winning, so basing it off the PTB, an idea I had is to make it so you get a permanent 10% haste after making a unique hook, but this instantly gets lost when you start a chase with a survivor, and the hook counter itself will turn yellow. This would make it so the high tier mobility killers who start chases immediately wouldn't really benefit from this too much, but the low mobility killers would massively benefit from it. For example, a trapper could go around placing traps and kicking generators after the hook, but still never lose that haste as long as he doesn't start a chase. This change I am a bit iffy on still, as chase mechanics can be a bit inconsistent and goofy at times in DBD. However, I do think it is a lot better than the haste buff we had on the PTB, where it was only for a limited duration, so really only killers who can start chases quickly benefited from it. We'll put this change in the possibly good, but needs testing category. This tunneling punishment I also have in the needs testing category, but I think could be good still. In my opinion, the way it was implemented in the PTB was far too punishing, with a killer not being allowed to kick generators if a survivor dies under 6 hooks. Survivors also did generators 25% faster too on top of this. I think instead, we moved the tunneling punishment counter to 4 hooks or less to punish the actual extreme tunneling, but only the 25% generator boost is given to survivors once a person dies then. Killers will still be allowed to kick generators like normal. The killer's hook counter will turn dark red when this is in effect, and survivors will see a hint of yellow around generators, as well as a dark red visual around their dead teammate to show this is in effect. Additionally, it's important to note that this only applies to survivors that die to something that is dependent on hook states. This means Onryo's condemned kills or Pig's traps will not trigger the anti-tunnel. I want this in the game because I think we've all had those moments on Survivor where the poor noob on your team is getting demolished by a hard tunneling high mobility killer, or someone kills themselves on purpose early in the game to make you all instantly lose. You and your survivor teammates shouldn't be punished in these moments in my opinion, and this playstyle for killers should never be promoted. I know I might get comments saying something along the lines of, what about getting a kill with 1 to 2 gens left? I'm of the opinion that if you get to that point of the game where you have 4 hooks or below and there's 1 gen left, that is probably just a skill issue on you, to be honest. With killers seeing hook tallies now, you have to be purposely tunneling a good survivor you can't catch to get to that point. Getting 5 hooks or more isn't super difficult from my testing, as if you really want to tunnel, you can do it to like 2 survivors at the same time juggling hooks. This is also one of those systems I would think punishes high tier, high mobility killers more too, as they can tunnel survivors a lot easier than most of the lower tier killers. Anything that dissuades hardcore tunneling like that is a positive for the game long term in my opinion. Also, a final thing, I want the PTB change to return where survivors have no collision while you have the normal unhooked status effects. This prevents survivors from bodyblocking the killer with endurance, or the other way around where a killer bodyblocks an unhooked survivor to make it not escapable. I'm sorry basement bubbas and trappers, but this playstyle sucks to play against and you know it. It still benefits killers though too, as survivors can no longer constantly bodyblock your way to take hits with it in certain scenarios. That's all just my thoughts and suggested changes on these systems though. As I said before, this is a super tough issue to tackle, so let me know in the comments if you think my changes are any good. Thanks for the support as always peeps, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.
Rock skull. All he wants to do is stream all night. Lobby full, rock skull. Never gonna play with me, but it's alright.